I almost passed on reviewing this research article because at first it really didn't seem like a big deal. But the more I thought about it, it really sunk in about how it defies discussions around dating and relationships, and how angry women get when men prefer or are attracted to younger women.
It makes me laugh when men come in my comments and say the reason why these older men are dating younger women is because they look hot. As if we really are buying that. Tell the truth, you're dating these younger women because they don't know themselves, therefore they have a fragmented sense of self. You can manipulate her. She's easily controlled. You won't be challenged. The woman is just following your control and she's doing everything that you say. But what happens when those women wake up? Tell the truth.
Okay, let's do that. Let's tell the truth. Let's break that down, and as we continue, ask yourself if the narrative about preference for a younger partner, a younger woman, is rooted in control, manipulation, and abuse. Oh, and by the way, in the 36 comments, she pretty much got roasted in her own video. So what I want to do today is review this 2024 article out of UC Davis and Northwestern University titled No Gender Differences in Attraction to Young Partners, a study of 4,500 blind dates. Published in Psychological and Cognitive Sciences, the study was an examination of over 6,000 adults who used a matchmaking service to find a long-term partner. In total, the data came from just over 4,500 blind dates and more than 9,000 post-date reports. After each date, participants reported their romantic attraction, their overall rating of the date, and whether they wanted a second date. The basic question was, are people more attracted to older or younger partners after actually meeting them in person? Now, one of the most common assumptions in dating is that men prefer younger women, and that's why middle-aged women are often so upset in the dating world. The guys are taking all the younger women and not paying any attention to the middle-aged ones. The truth is that even across countries, men do tend to be older than women at first marriage. Here in the United States, couples in which the man is at least 2 years older are much more common than couples in which the woman is at least 2 years older. So a common outcry among women is that the age gap exists because men want younger women and they're shallow for doing so. And as we just saw, men are even controlling, manipulating, and abusive for having that preference. They're preying on the younger ones. But these authors argue that the assumption is not fully supported. Yes, when people are asked directly about their preferences, men often say that they prefer younger partners. And online dating behavior often shows this same pattern. But those are stated preferences and search filters. They don't necessarily show what happens after two people actually meet face to face and report their attraction after a real date and a real meeting. Now, that distinction is important because some gender differences appear much larger in the abstract than they do IRL, for the younger ones out there. Now, the authors note, for example, that men are much more likely than women to swipe yes on any dating app profile. But the gender difference is much smaller in face-to-face meetings and after those events happen. No, that's why this study is really interesting to me, and after I started to think about it, I really did want to cover this topic. The study didn't rely only on what people say they want. It assessed what people reported after the blind dates. And one of the things I really like about this study is that there were no college students. It was not a young people study. And they were not casually participating in some survey that their advisor or their psych department was doing. Participants were mostly middle-aged adults using a matchmaking service while looking for long-term romantic partners. In fact, the average age of the participants was about 47 years old, and the sample included many divorced, single, widowed, and separated adults. So this is much closer to the adult dating market than a typical young people's attraction study. Now, let's get into this. The main finding would, I think, surprise a lot of people, women in particular. Both men and women were slightly more attracted to younger partners. Now, the effect was small, so I don't want that to be exaggerated. But the evidence is there. The point is that the preference for youth did not meaningfully differ by gender. Both men and women showed a slight preference for younger partners. And this was true even when the authors looked at romantic attraction, overall date rating, and the decision about whether or not they wanted to go on a second date. which means that what women say they prefer in theory isn't necessarily how they respond after meeting men in person. According to these findings, there's really no difference, and women are doing it as well. Another interesting part to me is that people's stated upper age limits. Before the blind dates, participants reported the maximum age that they were willing to match with. Men reported a smaller upper age limit than women did relative to their own age, which fits with common dating discourse. But those stated age limits did not matter much after the date. Overall, the full sample of participants were not less attracted to someone just because that person exceeded their stated maximum age. In plain English, people's stated age boundaries did not operate like hard rules written in stone after meeting. I actually think that this is one of the most useful discussion points. A lot of dating discourse assumes that preferences are absolute. A woman says that she likes older men who they hope are more mature and stable. So people assume that women aren't also attracted in younger men. But this study's results suggest that stated preferences can be a weak predictor of actual romantic experiences. People may report what sounds reasonably socially acceptable and even consistent with their own self-image. But after actually sitting across from another person, attraction appears to operate very differently from what women would have us believe. Also, interestingly, the authors also address the obvious question of, well, if women are slightly more attracted to younger partners, then why do mixed gender couples still usually include older men with younger women? And their response is not that the age gap doesn't exist. Their point is that the age gap may not be caused by women being more attracted to older men. It may be partly caused, as they explain, by how the dating pool is structured before people even meet. For example, in their study, the men were about 3.5 years older than the women on average. So even if men and women both showed a slight preference for youth, many couples who ultimately got together from the study could still reflect an older man, younger woman pattern simply because the age difference was already built into that available dating pool. And to be fair, the authors did also mention a couple of limitations. And at the forefront of those is that the study didn't follow people all the way through into actual long-term relationships. It measured initial attraction after the blind dates. However, the study is hard to ignore because of its size and its unique contribution. The data set is large, and the respondents were remarkably appropriate, I think. Middle-aged adults, real dates, and post-date evaluations. That creates a useful challenge to the popular dating narrative that says men are shallow and youth-obsessed.
Tell the truth, you can manipulate her. She's easily controlled. You won't be challenged.
But this study doesn't support that narrative very well at all. The broader lesson is that what people say they want, what they search for, what they are willing to admit, and how they actually respond after meeting someone are not always congruent. In dating, that gap is relevant because people build entire theories and anecdotal storylines based on what people say they want. But if stated preferences are unreliable, then a lot of dating commentary isn't including the full story. So guys, give me your thoughts. As I mentioned, this one almost didn't get coverage, but I think it's really interesting. As always, be careful out there. I'll see you soon.